Hello everybody, this is Gregory, 5-Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today we're going to talk about the chapel veil controversy. Should women be wearing them in the holy sacrifice of the Mass? Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti. Amen. Gloria Patri et Filio et Spiritui Sancto, sicut erat in principio et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. All right, so I'm being a little hyperbolic to say that there's a chapel veil controversy, but I think this channel, I would say, caters more to traditional Catholics who are more likely to wear them, or at least see women who wear them. I think this topic is a little more germane. Now, what do I mean by the chapel veil controversy? In other words, should women be wearing chapel veils in Mass? And I think we first have to always look at history, because you don't know where you're going unless you know where you've been. And you think of George Orwell's classic 1984, those who control the present control the past, and those who control the past control the future. So history is important. Historically, women did wear veils, or mantillas, as they would call it in the Latin American world. It was quite common. And not only was it quite common to wear them in Mass, but you would see they would wear them in public as well. That was very common in European society for centuries. And you can still kind of see this vestige of covering yourself, of course, in Muslim countries as well. But if we just look specifically at the church, it was very, very, very common to wear a chapel veil at Mass. Now, why did they have this? Well, there is a section in 1 Corinthians that talks about head coverings. And we've talked about here the verses in 1 Peter 3 and Ephesians in some places that talk about how women should be modest and obedient and not be too concerned with braiding their hair and ornamental stuff and whatnot. So, I mean, you can make a connection with that, but certainly the verses in 1 Corinthians. But I think I'll give the male perspective, because I've heard the female perspective. There have been women in my life who have worn the chapel veils. I've had women in my life who refuse to wear the chapel veil because they see it as oppressive, they see it as patriarchal, they see it as uncomfortable to keep it on there. I've seen women who in good earnestness want their daughters to wear it, but the daughters don't want to wear it, they want to pull it down. So, I've seen quite a bit. And then I've seen families where there's 4 daughters and the mother and the grandmother, and they're all wearing chapel veils. I can just give it from the male perspective here. I would prefer if women wore chapel veils, not because I'm some oppressive representative of patriarchy, because I'm a man. Because understand, what do chapel veils do? And it's kind of concomitant to what modest clothes do. Men, we get distracted very easily. We are very visual creatures. And if there is a woman who is either scantily clad at church and or is maybe has a beautiful neck or has a beautiful hair, beautiful body, we get distracted. We get distracted really easily when we see beauty. And God instilled beauty in this world, and beauty, some would say, is the closest, especially female beauty, is the closest you get to some sort of belief of God or close to the existence of God. I'm not saying that, but we're all attracted to beauty, whether it be in poetry, in paintings, and whatnot. So when you have an attractive woman in church, men are going to get distracted. Married men are going to get distracted. Single men are going to get distracted. And so by wearing a chapel veil and coupling that with modest dress, this makes us easier for us to focus in the Mass. And I would say for that purpose, just that purpose only, from the male perspective, I would say is the main reason why women should wear chapel veils. It's not necessarily about you. Think about the men in the church. Now, some of the women are like, oh, men are checking me out. Good, I'm not going to wear a chapel. I want to be looked at. But remember, it's about modesty. It's about modesty. It's about comportment. It's about proper comportment and whatnot. And so, also, what do chapel veils kind of demonstrate to the public, right? That you understand this kind of connection to not wanting men to lust, and you're also trying to maintain kind of the Holy of Holies, the veil that covered the Holy of Holies. Like, you are a sacred vessel that should not really be touched until marriage, and I think it gives an outward sign of that kind of striving for holiness. That's not to say that there aren't women who wear chapel veils at church and are maybe having a little meretricious, salacious lifestyle that they're not necessarily is aligned with their Christian living. But overall, I would say that there is a higher correlation that if you see women who are wearing chapel veils, especially young women or unmarried women who are wearing chapel veils, more likely than not, they're wearing it not to necessarily get attention, but it could just be part of their tradition, their culture, especially, let's say, Latin Americans, and or they believe that it's just part of kind of the ethos of being a traditional Catholic. Now, does it mean that if you don't want to wear a chapel veil, you are a lesser Catholic? No, not necessarily. Of course not. Of course not. And there are going to be people who wear chapel veils kind of like their trad cath, I'm a better Catholic than you ID card. Like, see, I wear the chapel veil, or I do these things. I don't do the peace offering because that's so Novus Ordo, or all these things. We've talked about in past episodes how there's a certain strand of traditional Catholicism that you could say are the new Pharisees. Because remember, the Pharisees were all about outward comportment, outward, looking good, and Jesus called them out and said, but inward you are just empty shells, right? But outward they wanted to look good. And so I think there is a strand of that. So I think you just have to be careful. I would prefer that women did wear chapel veils, whether it be Novus Ordo or in the Ordinariate or in the TLM or whatever, because I just think it's a good modeling for young women who are in the church, and I think it helps men so we don't get as distracted in Mass, and I just think it's beautiful. I just think it's so beautiful when you see women wearing chapel veils of different colors, and just kind of reminds us and connects us to our past where it was very, very common. And I would just like to see women of all ages wear it, but that's just my personal opinion. So this is one of those episodes where I would like to read your comments. What is your take on chapel veils? Women, men, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care, God bless, and pray.